Todd, kick it off.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the PowerApps community call, May 15th, 2019. This morning, funny thing happened to me when I woke up and thought about this call. I've been listening to Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg a lot lately, and I have a little rap to begin our call this morning. I see Shane Gruen. All right, here we go. Hello, PowerAppers. I got something to say. In case you haven't heard, we talking blob storage today. Put your files in and get your files out. Now sit back and relax while we show you all about. I think I'll keep my day job.
Oh my goodness. I don't even, Todd, I want to react, but I just, you go, girl. Do it.
All right. So let's get going with the call today, everybody. I'll start sharing my screen here and we'll get going at it. Screen showing up okay, guys? All right. Again, welcome to the community call, everybody. This is our May community call for Microsoft Power Apps. And if you haven't been to our call before, be aware that we record these calls. So if you're not comfortable being recorded in the chat, or if you unmute later and ask a question, you might want to drop out now. About our Power Apps community call, we do this every month on the third, if you will, Wednesday of each month. Our next call is at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on June 19th, 2019, and we'll have Ted Pattison joining us to talk about Power Apps. In this call, we go through the latest news and community contributions each month. We meet the product teams behind Power Apps. We have people on who are community experts with Power Apps, like Shane today. And we do technical deep dives on the Power Apps platform, and then we have Q&A. So our goal is to teach you as much as we can about Power Apps every single month. Today, our call agenda is introduce our presenters. Our topic is Power Apps Blob Storage. First, I'm going to go through and cover the fundamentals and architecture overview for how you work with blob storage inside of Power Apps. And then Shane's going to dive in a little bit deeper and show you how you actually do integration with data and common use cases inside a line of business Power Apps you build. Then we're going to jump into talking about the recent news and community activities. Shane and I will share some monthly tips related to this topic. And then we will move into the QA portion of the call. So who's on the call today? Well, that's me on the left there. I'm Todd Baginski. I'm a CTO and partner at Canvas. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I work with Power Apps, Azure, Office 365, mobile technologies, all kinds of things. You can find me on Twitter, as you see. I also have a blog and a YouTube channel too. And then we have Chuck Sterling from Microsoft. Chuck, why don't you introduce yourself too?
Hey guys, this is Chuck. Just recently joined Power Apps. Have been in the Power BI team for the last couple of years, replacing Audrey Gordon. Those are some big shoes, and I'm hopefully going to do a good job filling them.
All right. Thanks, Chuck. And then we've also got Shane, as I mentioned here before. Shane, I'll let you take it away.
Hello, my name is Shane Young with Power Apps 911. I would like to point out that I'm going to tell Audrey that Chuck said she had big feet. And, just like Todd, I work with this Power Apps, Power Platform, fun stuff. Check out my YouTube channel. I've got videos on everything, 58 different Power Apps videos at this point. So, but I probably already know most of you. So anyway, hi.
All right. Great to have you here, Shane. Thanks for being here. And in the background, we've also got many Power App community folks who are real gurus with the product, and they're helping us out in chat. If you saw my tweet on Twitter, you will see that I mentioned, hey, are you blocked? You're just starting out in Power Apps. You got a question. How can we help? Ask in the chat. Brian and Eichel are there standing by. And if you'd like to help people answer questions too, please let us know and show up and help out the community. That's really what we want this to be, is a place you can always come and get your questions answered and get unblocked with Power Apps. So
actually, I think Brian's in Japan, and last time I saw him at like 5 hours ago was in a bar. So I'm guessing he's not in the chat window today.
Gotcha. Or if he is in the chat window, maybe you don't want to listen to his answers.
Exactly.
Hey, I found some of my best community answers come after wine 30, so I'm just saying.
Nothing wrong with that. All right, so without much more introduction here, let's start jumping into how do we create solutions with PowerApps and Blob Storage. So I'd like to start with this picture to show everybody pretty much how this works at a high level. On the left, you'll see you've got PowerApps or flows or logic apps. And on the right, we've got Azure Storage, in this case, Blob Storage. And how do they talk to each other? Well, they talk to each other through what's called the Azure Blob Storage connector. This is just like any other connector you use in PowerApps to talk to SharePoint or OneDrive or get information about a user's profile, Outlook, whatever the case may be. It's just another one of those connectors, and it allows you to interact with Azure Blob Storage. You'll notice the key that I have above the arrows between the Blob Storage connector and the boxes that represent the Blob Storage account back in Azure. That key is there to help you understand that this is secure, and that is essentially an access key I will show you in just a little bit that you're going to need to plug into the connector so you can actually access your Azure Blob Storage accounts. Now, an important thing to point out here is when you're working with Azure Blob Storage, first you create what's called the storage account. You can create one or many storage accounts, but you only need one to support a Power App. Within that storage account, you can create an unlimited number of containers. A container organizes a set of blobs. You can think about it like a directory in a file system, for example. And a storage account can include an unlimited number of containers, and a container can store an unlimited number of blobs, just like I have in my diagram here. Azure Storage supports 3 different types of blobs, but the PowerApps Blob Storage connector only works with block blobs. It doesn't work with append blobs or page blobs, so you don't even need to worry about those when you're working with PowerApps. So let's get out of the slides here and jump forward and actually see a little demo here on the fundamentals of Azure Blob Storage with the Power App. So I'm going to open up here Azure, and I've got my Chromium web browser going on here. I love this browser. It's so fast. So how do we get started? Well, the first thing you would need to do is go to Azure, log in, and then click New and click Storage and select Storage Account. This is going to give you this page here, which will allow you to create a storage account. You'll give it a name. You'll pick which location and data center you want it in. And then here's the part where you actually have to make a decision. Am I going to use the general purpose storage account, which supports blob storage as well as table storage and Azure Queue storage? Or do I need this storage account just for blob storage? Then the other thing that you need to think about is, how do I want to replicate this? There's the locally redundant, geo-redundant, and read access geo-redundant storage. Depending on your SLA, basically, this is how you're going to want to select how you do your replication. All 3 of them work. So after you make one, it looks like this. This is a storage account that I made when I selected this account kind, just blob storage, as you can see here. And so as I come to the storage account now, you can see the only services that are available are the blobs. That's where we're actually going to store it. Now, the other thing that you do after you create the storage account is you click on this access keys right here. And
hey, Todd, we actually have got a couple asked for, can we do a Control Plus and see if we can actually get the portal font as a little bit bigger? Krishna was saying it's a little bit blurry. Perfect, perfect. And then also for folks who actually are on YouTube, you can actually force YouTube to actually pull down an HD in the lower right-hand corner. There's a gear there. Todd, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No problem. Thanks. So after you've created your storage account, you're going to need to retrieve this key right here so that you can write to your storage account. You're going to need this storage account name and the key, and that's all you need to do to plug it into PowerApps. So I'm just going to come back here right now and delete this one since I just gave up my key to the entire world, and prevent anything from getting written into there so I don't forget later. So delete that account now. Now we'll bounce over to the other storage account that I've created that I'm running my demo with. In this storage account, you can see that I have more than one type of thing I can store in it. I can store blobs, files, tables, queues. This is that general type of storage account. I'm only working with blobs here though, so I'm going to dig in and show you what I've got. Here's the containers I've created. I made one for images, one for PDF files, and another that I was experimenting with for text files. Inside of my PDFs container, you can see I have 2 PDFs that I uploaded. I coach a boys lacrosse team, and so I just made some PDFs out of some documents related to that. I do not have any images in here at this point right now, and you'll see that in just a minute. So now that we've seen how we laid it out in Azure and how we have these things structured, we can jump into the Power App and actually see how we connect our Power App. You can download this Power App from a link that we have in the slide deck we'll distribute at the end of this webinar. And the nice thing about this Power App is I put instructions here on the left side. They don't show up at runtime because they're actually less than 0 on the x-axis here. But as you can see, it tells you the steps that you need to connect Power App to Azure Blob Storage. So to do it, you go to View, Data Sources, click Add Data Source, then select New Connection, Azure Blob Storage. And then you remember that storage account name and the access key that I showed you back in Azure? You just paste them in here and hit create. Once you've done that, you're ready to go. So you can see as I look at the data sources I've already got, this is the only one that I've got in this app. So I've already done that, and I've tied it to this storage account that we're looking at right here in Azure. So let's spin it up now and run it and walk through it. Talk about how it works. So the first thing that you'll see in the top left of my Power App is I have a gallery that lists the different containers. I've displayed the display name from them as well as their programmatic ID under the hood. How did I get that list? Well, I used that connector we talked about. So if I open up my tree view and I click on my containers gallery here, you'll notice my items collection is a collection I call root folders. I gave that my name, that collection myself. And if I go here to the screens on visible, you can see where I create that collection. I'm saying clear collect, make the root folders collection, and here's that Azure Blob Storage connector. This list root folder v2 method .value will return me all of the containers in the collection. Isn't that simple? It's ridiculously simple, in my opinion. So now I have my list of containers. When I then click on a container, as I mentioned, I already have some in PDF, so I'm going to start there. I click on a PDF, and now it lists those blobs I showed you inside of that container. And I even have a preview here. So I can, this is the one at the top. This is a little presentation I gave to the local chapter on how I thought we could change the rules to make it more fun for the kids this year. And down here, I have a practice plan from Monday. What did we do at practice? And how did we go about things there? So both of those I just made a PDF of, uploaded them. But you can see them here inside of this other gallery, my blobs gallery right here. Notice the collection name is called blobs. Again, I created the name of this collection, and how did I set that? Well, if we come back over to the containers gallery and we look at the on select here, this is where you can see I actually create that blobs collection that's bound in my right gallery in the Power App. And so to do that, I say, Azure Blob Storage connector dot list folder v2. I pass in the ID of the selected item in my gallery on the left, and then I put in this little parameter here. This is very important. This basically says that I want you to give me the list of everything in that container in a flat fashion. So if there did happen to be folders underneath that container, this would flatten them all out so I can get them all back in a single collection, and it really helps me out. You don't have to use that, but for my example here, that's why I'm using it and explaining to you how that works. So now that I've clicked on one, I run this code and I create the blobs collection. I bind it up, as I showed you, to the items for this gallery, and then we can actually take a look at the different fields here. You can see that the display name, the gallery ID, the media type, the path to the item, and the size, those are all just me truncating some text or concatenating some text that you see here to give it a label and then the value. The most interesting piece, though, is the blobs gallery image, this one right here. This is not showing up for PDFs. So I'm going to come back to this in just a second and show you how I'm using this to actually read back the data for images and display it when I select an image. The reason this control is not showing up right here, I can show you if I click the visibility, is because I have an if statement that controls the visibility. If the word image is in this item's media type, then display it. If not, don't. And you can see here with PDFs, media type is not part of an image, and that's why I'm hiding this control right now. To display my PDF, I use this PDF viewer, and this one basically checks, is the selected item inside of that blobs gallery? Does it have PDF in it? If in the path? If so, then go get its content from the Azure Blob Storage container based on the ID for that item. So that's actually how I actually am getting the content back that represents that PDF and then setting it to the document property for my PDF viewer so I can see it. So now we've seen how we can handle PDFs. Let's look at a more common use case, though. I see a lot of people using PowerApps to say, I want to take a picture in PowerApps or upload a picture from PowerApp and put it somewhere and then store it and view it. So let's go over to images. When I click on images, I have the control visibility for the PDF viewer. It disappears, and then I've introduced this new set of controls down here to allow me to upload a picture. I can now click this button and I can go upload a picture. And before I do that, let me go grab the name of it real quick and copy that, paste it in down here and pick upload. And now I've uploaded that picture. And isn't that crazy how fast that is? I mean, I just uploaded that to Azure and then read it back from Azure with all its metadata and displayed it there in what seemed to be about a second. So as you can see, these connectors are very, very fast. Now you can see that I'm working with a different media type, image, JPEG in this case. And I can go upload another one. Let's say I have a PNG file, for example, my dog Obi. And I'll put picture of Obi in here and upload him. And now I have both in there. I'd like to upload one more image to show you something really nice about how PowerApps displays images that come out of Blob Storage or anywhere else. And I can go upload this. And what you'll notice now is that after I have all the images uploaded here, no matter what the orientation is of my image, when I click on it, I just clicked on the top one, it displays it. And the bottom one was not in landscape mode, it was in portrait mode, and it displays appropriately too. So you don't need to spend any time trying to work out and rotate images and things when you use this approach. PowerApps just takes care of it for you. So we already saw how we can read containers, read blobs out of containers, and upload one. And how did I actually upload it? Let's take a look at that code. Again, it's very simple. Azure Blob Storage connector right here.
Hey, Todd, there's been another request for actually seeing if you can make that font a little bit larger. Will Control Plus get us there, or is that actually a browser? No, actually, there you go. Perfect.
There we go.
Thank you.
Sure. So I use the Azure Blob Storage connector again. This time I call create file. I pass in the path of the selected container in the containers gallery. This says, which container am I going to put this file into? The next one is the name of the file I'm going to upload. That's where I pasted it into my text box. And then the uploaded image controls image property actually contains the image itself. That's all you need to do. And you're now uploaded to Blob Storage. After I do that, I just refresh my blobs collection using the same code I showed you before. And because this particular gallery is bound to that collection, that allows me to immediately see the change that I made. So if I now do another operation here, let's do a delete. Let's delete this cloud image. So I'm going to click delete, and now it's removed from Azure Blob Storage. And how do we do delete? Well, delete is just as simple as uploading. It's actually even simpler. You just say Azure Blob Storage connector .delete file, and then you pass in that item's ID. And this item's ID is coming out of the currently selected item in that gallery. A couple things to note. If I go to change picture here and I upload Obi's picture, but I do not put a file extension on it. Oh, pardon me, select him, come down here, and let's say I forget to tell it the file extension and I upload it. It's still going to upload the picture, just like you see here. But because the file extension doesn't exist, my media type is not seen as a proper image type, and therefore I can't display it inside of the PowerApps image control. Another thing to point out, if I would change the picture of Obi to the cloud, but call it Obi and upload it, you'll see what happens right here in just a second. Actually, I should have done the extension on it here. Let me do that real quick. So I am calling that one obi.png and uploading my file. See how it overwrote it? It's going to overwrite the files you have in there. So the reason I pointed these two things out is to demonstrate when you're doing this, you want validation to, number one, ensure you have a file extension. And number two, ensure your file name is unique. That way you won't run into any problems as you're uploading your files into the Azure Blob Storage. So now we've covered getting back containers, how to get a list of the blobs in the container, how to upload them, how to delete them, how to work with PDFs and images. I've got a question about my YouTube video about this. Someone said, can you do it with a text file? I said, I don't know, I never tried it. So I tried it out. And I uploaded a text file that just says, this is a text file in it, to Azure Blob Storage. This is the value I receive back from Azure. And I've tried to bind this up to an HTML control, and it doesn't show up either. So as far as I know, there's no way to display the contents of a text file in PowerApps at this point in time, but there's so many smart people on this call. I would love to hear someone in chat say, no, I know how to do it. So if you've done it, please let us know. We'd love to see how that's done. But I thought I'd bring it up since it's a common ask. So that is it for my portion of the demos here today. And now we're going to jump over to Shane, and he's going to talk about integrating with data and common use cases on how you can do this. So Shane, I'll let you take it away here.
Very cool. Yeah, Todd, that was awesome. That was a great fundamental. Here's all the moving pieces. And so now what we're going to try and do is I'm going to take what you exposed everyone to get them going, and now we're going to go take and apply this to a real one. Also, bonus tip, Todd, so you don't fall asleep while I'm talking, because I know you usually do. I've got a trick that's going to save you some of the problems with file names that you're having. So
awesome.
I'm looking forward to digging in here. So let me share my screen. I made a couple slides, but let's just be honest. I hate slides, so we're just not going to do any slides. We're just going to jump straight in here. So share my screen. Oh, there you go. You can all can see Todd's face. Hi, Todd. Bye, Todd. And so let's go over here. All right. So a couple of little things I wanted to talk about, and we're going to do not what I was planning on demoing, but I told Todd this is what would happen. So one of the things Todd was referring to how fast this works. And so with that speed, what I wanted to do is I made a very simple app that times how long it takes to save a file to Azure Blob Storage versus saving it to Azure SQL. So if we click on change picture, we get rid of Chuck's ugly face there. You just look too like, you're thinking about how, what is the meaning of life type of stuff. But so we jump in here, we're going to say change our picture, and we're going to grab, we're going to change this sort and say, hey, show me details, because we want to grab a big one. So see this picture of Chewy on the couch is 6 megs, right? So we're going to say open. There you go. There's Chewy looking adorable. And so if we say save to our blob storage here, this is counting in milliseconds. And so this first one's going to take, so what did that take? That took 4.7 milliseconds or 4.7 seconds to save to Azure Blob Storage. Let's take that same file and say save to SQL Storage. And this is where I wish I could wrap like Todd, because now we've got about 30 to 45 seconds to save that same file out to Azure SQL. This is one of the things that came up with a lot of our customers is they struggle around file size and performance. They want to take pictures of roofing inspections or forms that people have signed off on. You can see it's still running down there. And basically what we found is that by moving from Azure Blob Storage, or from storing the files in SQL or somewhere else to storing them in Azure Blob Storage, it's about, anywhere from 5 to 10 times faster depending on the file. So this one uploaded 7 times longer to go to SQL. So to Todd's point, this thing is fast. And I mean super fast. So I wanted to do that. So over here, what I want to do now is take this concept and put it into a little bit of context for all of us. So this is an app that I had built for creating an expense report. And so if we go in here and say create a new expense report, so up here at the top, right, it's the, the demo, it's the master, what was your expense about? This is definitely wasteful. And so then I have this line item capability, I need a taco and it's $5, right? And we save, and then we get down here and we got a tea and it's $2. So, normal line item expense report stuff, great. But now my customer said, hey, I want to add receipts. So just like Todd, I have a add media control over here, but we're going to say add your receipt. And so then now we can choose a picture. Let's see, we'll go with some kisses. You guys seem like you're kissing people. We'll say open. And so then right now it is writing it out to Azure Blob Storage. Now notice that I got the file name, right? Whereas Todd was having to enter his file names for OB and such. And so the difference there, and I didn't learn this until very recently, so I'm happy to share it, is that in the add media control, right? Because that's the control that Todd and I are using, right? We're still going right here, we're saying media and then add a picture, but we can use this to upload more than just pictures. We'll talk about that in a second. But the add media control, it knows the file name of the file that the user uploaded. So in Todd's case, where he was selecting ob.jpg, it would have just known ob.jpg without doing it. So that's a little trick for stealing the file name. And I didn't learn that one until very recently. So
nice trick, Shane. I'm using that from now on.
Yeah, that was a big one for me, Todd. I was like, oh my God, where has this been all my life? It was right there the whole time.
It really speeds it up for the user too, right? Because
yes,
they don't have to take the time to type it in.
Exactly. And so then add media button 1, right? So that's taking the media just like Todd had shown for grabbing it. So I'm writing it off to Azure Blob Storage. And so then what I'm doing as well is you see this little line right here. So what I'm going to do is when I write this to Azure Blob Storage, I'm going to save the whole record that I wrote into a variable called var Azure file. So then now when I build my collection or when I am referencing it elsewhere, I have all of the pieces in the place, right? So I actually didn't do it in this example. Well, here you go. So here's the path. So I did var Azure file.path to get that back, and var Azure file ID as well. So very similar to Todd. And then I do a reset the button. So instead of having it show the last one over and over and again, I just always reset the button or the control back to its normal state. So it just continually says add a receipt, and then it puts it into the collection just like Todd. So then the next thing I did here is for viewing my files. So Todd showed us some cool tricks around using the built-in view capabilities in PowerApps, right? He used the PDF viewer control, the image control, and he did that based on the file type. I'm not as smart as Todd to do that type of stuff. So what I like to do is I like to take advantage of the fact that my computer knows how to deal with this file. So if I click on kisses.gif, what's going to happen is I'm going to use the launch function and pass it that URL. And so in this case, it knows what to do with a GIF. It says, oh, with a GIF, I show this. But if I was to go over here to our thing and add another thing, and let's add a different file type. So all files, let's add an Excel file. All right, so we're going to put an Excel file out there. And so then now if they click on the Excel file, well, the browser says it's not going to do anything because it's being rude. Let's try again. The browser says when I click on the Excel file, then it knows it only downloads Excel files. If I click on a PDF, it shows the PDF. But what I'm doing here is instead of me trying to build the processing capability on what I want to do with different file types, all we're doing is if you look at the on select here, it is launching the FL, which is the file link. And so we're just taking advantage of the launch function. And then whatever your browser or mobile phone is set to do with that file type, it'll do it. And PowerApps doesn't have to worry about it. So that's been another piece of the puzzle that's really enabled me to do some more fluid things because unlike Todd, I'm not good enough to understand file meta types and changing that type of thing.
And that's really great, right, Shane? Because now you can either provide an experience with the way you did it to say, let's let the native functionality of what's on your computer handle it and jump outside of the Power App. Or you can say, maybe I have a use case where I've got this need to display it inline in the Power App, and we can do either one we want.
There you go. So very nice little thing here. So then another piece what I want to talk about is when I actually save this, right? I'm not going to go through all the code, but basically when you hit save here, we're going to for all through this collection and patch those all off to SQL because I want to be able to track all of the files associated. And so if we switch over to my SQL Server tool here, you're going to be able to see that when I save it to SQL, what I got, I have an ID that's just literally, the primary key for my SQL table. I store the entire file link. I store the file name separately because I want to be able to show that later as its own piece. And then I am tying it to the master ID, which is going to reference it back to the same expense report, right? So the expense report that gets created, its ID was 55. So that's what it's referencing itself back to. That's over here. And then the Azure file ID, apparently I broke that. But so what I'm doing there is I'm keeping the actual ID of the Azure Blob. And the reason I'm doing that is because if you want to do a remove, like Todd showed, remove requires the ID, not the URL. And so to make my apps as fast as possible for actual customer use, I wanted to have this ID available. So when I hit remove, I didn't have to go look up the ID or go find the ID. I just knew the ID right away. So these are what I consider the standard columns. So like when I teach our consultants here at PowerApps 911, every one of our blob storage solutions have all of these same columns because it enables all of the scenarios that the customer might come back to us and say, I want to do this or that. We've now got all the data captured in a repeatable way so we can enable editing, or not editing files, but deleting files later or any of that type of stuff. So that's been nice. Yes.
What's the Omaha table for? Are you building this for Peyton Manning?
Omaha, there you go. No, I did a all-day session for the Omaha user group. If you notice, the database name is Branson. So basically you can tell where I'm at in the country when I create these things. So look at Todd snooping at my table structure. I see what you're doing. So that's the SQL side of it. Not very complicated, but writing this over here has been very helpful for us. Also, so Todd did a demo, and he showed us how to look at the Azure pieces via the browser, right? So portal.azure.com, and he was showing us how to get through there. So Microsoft also makes a program called Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer available for free. And so when you're doing Azure Storage Explorer, it gives you all that same information. So all my keys are down here, right? I'm not going to show you sneaky people my keys, but all my information that I need is down here. And I can see the files in the structure. So if we do a refresh, right, we'd see that I just uploaded that, right, that Excel files in here somewhere. I don't know. You can see I dump a lot of stuff in here. But oh, there it is, the MailChimp emails. So all of these things are in here, but this is another way for you guys to manage it, especially if you want to get in and manage like security, or you want to be able to get links and pieces for individual URLs. All of that information is here. So you can probably, if you're going to do much with Azure Blob Storage, you probably want to download Azure Storage Explorer.
Hey, Shane, Jamie's got a question for you.
Of course.
How are permissions handled for Azure Blob Storage? Do I need to share the Blob Storage with my app users, or does the connection impersonate me?
So the connection uses the key that Todd showed us to plug in earlier, but then the way that the security will work, right? So once again, I knew we'd talk about something random I wasn't ready to talk about. So good job, Jamie. So right here, what you can do is you can look at the, I think it's right here. Nope. One more. I will eventually find one over. So there's manage or set public access level. So this is where you want to start. So on a Azure Blob container, there are 3 different security settings. So one is no public access, and that means that the URLs don't work, right? If you noticed over here, let's go back over here for a second. When I clicked on kisses.gif, right, that's a URL. And if you guys are, haven't go through the effort, you could type that URL in your browser and you could see that right now, because that URL is publicly available, because that's what I set my security to, right? Because I said public read access for blobs only. But the default setting is no public access. And so if you want to use no public access, right, we're going to change this and break my app right now. So no public access and apply. If I go back over here now and refresh kisses.gif, it says, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, right? Because there's no access has been granted to that file. So that URL is dead. The only way to get to that URL is through API calls, which is like what Todd showed us by using the galleries stacked on top of each other. Todd could get to the file with his approach, but my approach of using the URLs would not work. Okay, so that's the default security setting. But if we go back over here, so we go back in here to manage access policies. Nope, not manage access policies. We're not ready to do that yet. Go back to set public access level. So it didn't refresh, whatever. In here, so you can control the different access. Now, if you wanted to, what a lot of times people say, okay, I don't want that, anyone with the URL can get to it, which is probably overkill. I don't agree with those people. When they say that, what we can do is we can come in here and I can say, all right, well, then I want to get a shared access signature. And so then now I can create a key and say, all right, I want to make one that starts now, it ends tomorrow, right? And I can control the dates. I'd probably change this date to 2020. So now this key will be good for a year. And with this key, you're going to be able to read it. So we say create. And so then now it says, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to take this query string. So I'm going to copy that. And if we go back over here to the file that we didn't have access to, and I take that URL and I append that big old key, now we have access again. So this is a way that you can still have publicly accessible URLs, but only with the key. And when you generated the key, right, I was able to time bomb the key for one year. I could set it for 10 years, whatever it is. But so when you're thinking about your solution, that's what you're after, right? Can the URL just be used by anyone straight up? Can the URL be used only if they got the key? You have to kind of work your way through it. But Azure Blob Storage supports all the security things It's just a matter of which one meets your needs. Now, the thing I would tell you, if you're going to do something like this key, the temptation will be to store in the file link, to store this whole link with the key. But remember, your key might change. So what I encourage people to do, if that's the case, is in your app, right? And this is a thing I think I stole from Todd a long time ago. So if we go in here, what I could do, like with app on start, is I could say, set var Azure key, and then I would set it to that big old string, right? So set var Azure key, and then I just put in the URL in quotes because it's just text. So now when my app starts, that's the key. So I'll run the on start to get that in there. And so then for the on select here for kisses, instead of launch file link, it's going to be launch file link ampersand var Azure key. And so then if I did it right, who knows, I'm making this up on the fly. But if I click kisses.gif now, well, let's close this tab. That way it has to open again. So if I click kisses.gif, see how it's automatically appending the key onto the end for me. And so if for whatever reason my key needs to change one day, then what do? I just come in here and I just change the key, and then my whole app keeps working. I didn't have to worry about changing all of these URLs to put in the new key. So that's one of those pro tips if you're going to have to do keys. And I'm glad Daniel's on here because him and I are supposed to have a conversation about this. So there you go, Daniel. There's a precursor to the conversation. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling, but I get so excited here, and I'm time boxed. I've kind of gotten to the end of my 20 minutes already, and I have more to say. Todd, anything else I'm missing as I kind of talked about the security model? I want to make sure that we do a good job of letting everyone know that it works.
No, I don't think so. You've got about 5 minutes left.
Oh, well, then I'm going to use 6. All right. So then let's talk about for a second. So we talked about the remove, right? So Todd showed you that. Remember with your collection, remove it both from the collection. So remember Todd, when he removes it and then rebuilds his collection. I remove it from the collection and remove it from Azure Storage at the same time. I do it in 2 steps or in 2 pieces like this, because I end up with a lot of customer apps on really like 3G, 4G connections. And so the less data I can go fetch, so refetching that collection saves me a little pain and suffering there. So then I guess I'll show you real quick the way that I'm writing this out here. So this is my data, and this is the form. So when you hit save, it's submitting the form, and then my friend the form, on success, he is going to patch the line items for the expense stuff. But then this is how we are patching the data over for into SQL, right? It's how we're creating this SQL table, right? So for all the collected receipts, so that collection that we were generating, we're going to patch the table called receipts again with a new item, and then file name, file link, Azure ID, master ID. So that's how we're putting all the pieces together. Now, I will tell you, when I'm building these apps for customers, one of the things that we do in different apps, we do different ways, is some people want to kind of have this experience where I fill in all of this data, right? And then I kind of look at it and I go, mwah, this looks perfect. I hit save, and then we write all the data at once to all the different locations. Other customers say, hey, as soon as someone enters some data, I want to write it right away. And so in those cases, like that was the app I just did yesterday. In those cases, what will happen is the code here for on select, right? That was a button that adds it. There would just be a 3rd step right here. And so this line would patch that SQL row. So just one of those things to kind of keep in mind, Todd and I keep showing you different ways. But in reality, when you build apps, you kind of take a little bit of what he did, a little bit of what I did, a little bit of new English that you add, and you're going to combine and do it, right? There's not a set way every one of these should be built. Unless you're one of my consultants, then you have to build it exactly the way I say. But for the rest of you, you can kind of take these ideas and apply a little here, a little there. Because you end up finding out like order of operations matters. So for example, this one, I need to tie it back to the master records ID. But if I haven't created the master record, I don't have the master records ID. So what do? I have to then solve the equation there and figure out what I want to do. Another thing that was interesting that I just learned this morning is if you notice over here, I've got another way that we might organize these is I might want to have folders. And so today I've got, 3 folders, right? 6 to 1, 2, and 100. And so I kind of thought you'd have to come over here and generate a folder, but it turns out that Azure Blob Storage is pretty smart. So if I just come in here and say, I want to create a folder called webinar. So in my create file step, I'm saying save files here. That's the Azure Blob Storage name, right? That's the name that we're getting. So that's the name right here. So there's that name, but then / and whatever you put here, it will build the structure. So if I upload another file now, add a picture, and we'll do Greg's ugly face. And so now when we added Greg, if we go back to Azure Storage Explorer and just hit refresh, we'll see that, look, they made a folder called webinar for me, and they put Greg the Dork right here in here. So, and Greg the Dork is a good example of don't ever send me embarrassing pictures of you because they will end up in internet demos. Greg learned the hard way. But yeah, so that's another interesting trick, because something that Todd did talk about, and I want to reaffirm, you do have to think about overwrites. So if I just let users add things, if 2 people upload a file called toddisugly.jpg, the one will overwrite the other one, right? Because I just said the file name was that. I put them all in the same folder. Overwrites will happen. There'll be no prompting, no warning. So what you have to think about is, what are you going to do to make your file name unique? Are you going to append to it? Maybe you say, hey, we're just going to take and append to it now. And this, right? So now the file name when we upload this will be, well, it should be. Let's make sure I'm not lying to you. Let's say add receipt. We'll say Chewy Snow. And so then now if we go out here and do a refresh, and so because the date had folders in it, but you can see, so I made a quick little version of timestamping. So you could do timestamping. Some customers do folders, but you want to make sure that you're not going to let users somehow overwrite the file names. Another common one is if you really just don't care about the file names, right? You can just throw a GUID out there. There's a GUID function for generating GUIDs that'll always be unique. So different ways to do it, depending on what your file name is, but make sure you solve that problem. And there you go, Todd. As promised, I took 6 more minutes.
Well done. Thanks. Okay, yeah. So that's I'm going to take back the screen share here and share with everybody all the goodness of all the different links that we have that you can learn about this. So in our resources this month, we have blogs from the PowerApps blog. I wrote a blog on this. Shane and I both have a video in addition to what we've shown here on this topic. You can learn about Azure storage accounts here. The connector documentation, don't really know that you'd need it much more than what you've already seen here, actually. And then the last bit is the scalability and performance targets for storage accounts. Definitely need to read that ahead of time to make sure you're picking the right type of storage account before you actually start building on it so that you can support your SLAs. People have asked me about cost. What does this cost, people say? Here is an example of what that costs. As you can see, it is super, super cheap. So very, very cost-effective solution and very fast performing solution to store your files. All right, so thanks again, Shane. Awesome to have you on here today. It was fun tag teaming it with the the simple version. How do you get started? And then what do you wrap around that when you're actually putting it in the app that you did too? So loved having you on today. Thanks again for coming.
No, thank you for having me. And thank you, Chuck, for behaving himself in the background.
This brings us over to final parts of our call, which is the recent news. So all kinds of good news for PowerApps the last couple months. We've got links to all of them here, all the updates that happened in April and in May. You can now import components from Cloud Apps. I didn't even know this. Chuck pointed this out to me this morning. Yeah, and since we've talked about components on the calls a lot lately, That's been a new thing, and this is definitely something you should check out on how you can share your components in the cloud and reuse them quickly. There's also a nice white paper published on PowerApps Canvas app accessibility guidelines. A gentleman named Pat Dunn, who I had the pleasure of working on the Canvas app coding guidelines white paper, he created this one, and it's a whole bunch of lessons learned and how you should go about making your PowerApps accessible. He's done a ton of PowerApps internally for Microsoft, and they have very high accessibility standards. So if that is something you need in your Power App, definitely check that out. And then as always, there's the weekly release notes that you can check out too. We've had some great community contributions this week. I'm sorry if I missed you on this. I actually put this slide together over a week ago. But here are the folks I found tweeting with the Power App CC hashtag. Reza did a really cool Power App that showed how he did a calendar overlay. If you need to do a calendar, I suggest you check that out. And Mariano did a great weather app using the MSN weather connector. I saw him tweeting about that. Looking forward to seeing that when he finishes it up. And Gary, even though he won the Xbox last month, still contributing. Really cool topic here. I haven't seen anybody talk about this yet. How to make test plans for your Power Apps and get some automation going with that to test them. So that was very intriguing when I saw that, and I thought everybody else would be like, oh, really? I need to go take a look. So thanks to everybody for those. All right, wrapping it up. My tips related to blob storage. Plan your containers before you start development. Shane just showed how you can use folders within them. You may find that it makes sense to use just one container for your Power App. Maybe you'll have many, and maybe you'll have a lot of folders in them. Just like you would plan an information architecture in, let's say, a SharePoint document library or SharePoint lists, think about your containers and how you're going to lay that information out ahead of time. Then make sure you also consider what type of blob storage to use. I talked about that a couple times already. And make sure you're thinking about the long term when you think about both of these so that you can scale and meet all of your SLAs for your customers. And then we've got Shane's tips as well.
Yep. And so from my point of view, I can't stress enough for somebody who has tested all this stuff, who's tried all these different scenarios, Azure Blob Storage is the best by a large factor of anywhere you're going to store files. So file storage is part of what you need to do with Power Apps. You need to become good at Azure Blob Storage because this is going to be the thing that you need to use. I pointed out in the demo, but make sure you're storing the blob ID. It's easy to grab when you create the blob or when you upload the blob, but it's really hard to get to later. And so it's just something that enables more scenarios for you down the road. So if you just grab that blob ID in the beginning, I think that is a thing I wish I could go back and tell myself 6 months ago, because I have some places where I don't have it. And I'm like, oh, I want it now. And then finally, the last little piece of my demo there, and Todd also pointed out, make sure your file names are unique because it is unrelenting. If you say overwrite the CEO's important vacation photos with other CEO vacation photos, it's just going to do it. It's not going to say, hey, this photo seemed important. Did you really want me to override it? We will lose the legacy that is Chuck's vacation photos. And he only wears this Speedo once a year. So, we want to make sure we keep those forever. So watch out for overwrites.
All right. So to wrap it up, thanks again, everybody, for being part of the call today in this awesome Power Apps community we all have here together. This recording will be available soon in the Office Developer YouTube and also where you're watching it in YouTube right now, I think. Right, Chuck?
That's exactly right. As soon as I hit stop, you can actually rewind and go out and look at it in full HD fidelity. So the people that actually saw it blurry will definitely see it crisp because we did capture it that way.
Awesome. And so we will see you all next month on June 19th. At 8 a.m. and I will be back from vacation then. I should have a great suntan at that point. I'm looking forward to it. And we'll have Ted Pattison on with us to talk about the best practices about developing Canvas PowerApps. Both Chuck, myself, and Ted will be chiming in on that discussion and sharing lessons learned we've had to help you get started with your Canvas apps or tweak the ones you have so they are as good as possible.
And next week on this channel, we're also going to have Brian Blanchard actually walking through the Microsoft Company Store architecture, and he is going to walk through on how to do telemetry gathering of your PowerApps application. So DevOps style telemetry will be, he'll show you how to collect that.
Good stuff. That's a fun demo. I liked watching him show that to us the other day. I think people are really going to enjoy that call.
Yeah.
And then just a reminder, right? Business Application Summit. If you see us out there, right? I'm a hugger. Come give me a hug. Say hello, right? I like to make friends.
And despite that, still come.
Yeah. But I think that's very important, right? To point out Business Application Summit is in a couple weeks, and should be a lot of fun. And hopefully, you guys have got some cool things to announce post Business Application Summit on this call next month. So
we do.
That would be fun. Yeah, I hope you guys have a good time down at that call. I'm going to be sitting on the beach during that conference, actually, though.
No vacation photos, Todd. That's Chuck only.
Fair enough. Chuck, are there any questions that popped up that in the chat that we didn't get to or weren't answered in chat already?
Oh my God, Shane and John and Paul Swider and Daniel have been just triaging the hell out of those in real time. So we've been capturing them. So they've been done. Awesome.
Well, if you guys are planning on being in the call from now on to do that, I'll make sure we get you added to that slide at the beginning of our awesome chat gurus behind the scenes. Such a great group of folks here to be part of.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, guys. I'm going to go ahead and make it a wrap.
All right. Sounds good. So long, everybody.
Toodles.